I'm going to turn it over to Michael. I want to ask you, how can diplomatic efforts better address the humanitarian needs of people affected by conflicts in the Middle East? How has your trip to a place that is generating so much conflict in the face of humanity, we are witness to it, are you seeing any type of, are you getting any type of understanding in the humanitarian disaster that is being caused by colonization?
Yeah. Okay. Good question. I want to sort of set the tone first and foremost, which is, at the Common Sense Network, our goal is to bring people with different perspectives together. So my thing is, left wing, right wing, I'm trying to get to as much nuance as possible, because I do think one of the things that's frustrated me about the Middle East is oftentimes people glance at the conflict, they don't study it, they just sort of look and go, who's the bad guy, who's the good guy? And I think that simplistic framing doesn't work. I think you have to elevate the level of analysis, which then helps you elevate the level of, here's how we get to a solution. So naturally, when October the 7th happened, journalists all across the UK are scurrying around trying to get the facts. Very few journalists actually went to Israel to see what's happened on the ground. And I think being there really helped me sort of add more color to what were broad contours I had about the conflict. The truth is, like any democracy, there are a range of perspectives in Israel, and I imagine the same in Palestine. In Israel, you've got right-wing Israelis and kind of uber-right folk. You've got some very liberal folk. If you're in Tel Aviv, you've got folks who, have all sorts of views. If you're an Orthodox Jew, you have different views. If you're part of the Druze community, you have different views. And as we go down and go down and go down, you start to find out there's quite a lot of nuance going on there. And so I think the first thing I would really just say is, as young people who are passionate about changing the world, we have to sort of do the hard work to take a much closer look at what's going on there. I've often heard people say, Israel did this. Well, you mean the Israeli government. The truth is there's a bunch of young people who wouldn't support what, say, Prime Minister Netanyahu is doing. And so even making that distinction, I think, is important, because you can just castigate a whole group of people as quote unquote oppressors and another group is oppressed, and it's just not that simple. I hope we'll get into the detail, but I'm happy to go into the detail on how the Knesset is made up to talk about Hamas and Iran and Lebanon and all the kind of surrounding regions and the proxy wars and all those different things going on, which I think if we're serious about lasting peace, as you've said, we have to get to that question of why is the dream of a Palestinian being co-opted by a group to further a sort of religious aim? Like, that's a serious question we have to tackle. Why is one man sort of using a war to basically evade responsibility, right, which is coming for him? That's another question we have to tackle. These are serious, heavy questions, and they go beyond the sort of bad guy, good guy narrative, which unfortunately you get on TikTok and Twitter. It's far more complicated, and I hope even in this panel we can get into some of the nuance a bit later.
Thank you, brother, for that. Beautiful, well said. I think when you have the British accent, everything sounds even better, doesn't it? It sounds so much better. Alhamdulillah. We have to be honest with ourselves and understand that colonization is a real thing. Most of us who have borders around us and we claim certain countries, it was because it was colonized. These borders were put upon us. We didn't choose them. We have to remember something, that as a nation, we are one. We are one as a nation. What makes us so beautiful is the different colors amongst us, the different cultures amongst us, the different languages from amongst us. This is what makes us unique and diverse, but we are essentially one nation. When I went to what they call, it's Palestine, but we call it Israel, it is based, the country itself and the rules in its society is based upon apartheid and colonization. If you are a Muslim man or woman and you have some type of outer group into you, they will scrutinize you and speak to you in a different way. The closest thing that we can imagine to that is what people had in South Africa during the apartheid. The closest thing that we have in this country to that is Jim Crow laws, where if you were black, you were not allowed to enter through those doors. You had to go through the back. If you were black, you had no right to drink from that water fountain. You had to go through the colored water fountain. This is the condition in Israel. This is the condition. Make no doubt about it. If you're trying to cross into the borders and go to Ramallah, see how it is. See how they treat you. Literally, like you're something stuck to the bottom of the shoe. I give you that example because we all had guns stuck to the bottom of our shoe, right? It's annoying. It's not like trying to rub it off, it's making it worse. That's how they view the Muslim and the Arab there. I'm speaking from experience itself. When I went to the airport, they tell us, get there, on an international flight. You're supposed to be about 3 hours before, right? For us, it's 7 hours, minimum. Why? Because if you're anything like me, if you look like me, they're going to strip search you. And they're going to do something called a cavity search. If you don't know what it is, I'll let your imagination run wild. Imagine someone who has had the trauma of sexual abuse, some type of trauma of some type of abuse, and then pulling them inside of a dark room. And you know what they're doing? They're strip searching. You're a regular person. You tell them what you're doing here. Hey, I was on holiday vacation. Why? Because there's something about you that they don't like. We have to address the elephant in the room. That is a problem amongst them. And it goes back to the condition of the heart. It goes back to supremacy, white supremacy, religious supremacy, thinking that my religion is right and it's going to be this way. I'm going to conquer the old temple, destroy the old temple, bring the new temple, and Yeshua is going to come down. If that's what you believe, and if that's what your mission is, if that's what your prophecy is, then you know what? You're going to do it by any means necessary. So, excuse me and forgive me for the crude response or, if I offended anyone, but the truth of the matter is that this is based upon colonization and supremacy. And until we don't destroy this and call it out for what it is, we're not going to solve the issue.
Getting to know the politics, left wing, right wing, of a particular political landscape can help shape that future against an emerging crisis.
Got you. Again, I love that question, just like you loved yours, because, for me, I think the only path toward peace, long-lasting peace, is genuinely working hard to understand the sort of best intentions of your enemy, but also seeking to steelman their ideas. I've sat in a room full of Jewish rabbis. I've sat in a room full of Palestinians. I've sat in, and each room I'm in, they have a totally different view of what's happening, as you can imagine. They have a different view of who the bad guy is, who the good guy is, what peace looks like, what solutions look like, and then add on that, being in Israel and visiting the Druze community, a totally different perspective. Then walking, in Jerusalem and bumping into in a sort of Arab quarter, and bumping into somebody who is in a relationship with a sort of secular Jew, and I mean, it's so multifaceted and multi sort of it's interconnected. That to cleanly divide it up is why I think the issue is arising. My big sort of problem with the conflict in the Middle East, even more generally, is you've got all these different fragmented stakeholders. I don't think we do enough to understand, as I said, the desire of each one. So in Syria, for instance, and Yemen, you've got state, non-state actors. You've got, in Syria, for instance, you've got Assad's regime, you've got rebel groups, you've got Kurdish fractions. All of them have different goals, and success, quote unquote, looks different to each and every single one of them. I genuinely don't know what the solution is. I mean, take Israel Palestine. I do not know, because on one side, I would never want to hold all Palestinian people responsible for the actions of, at least based in the UK, a prescribed terrorist group, Hamas. But in the same way, I would not, and I know a lot of Jewish people would not want to be held sort of responsible for the actions of a very right-wing Israeli government right now. Now, how you balance all of that requires some serious negotiations. As it currently stands, both sides aren't engaging really in serious peace talks. And so rather than just saying, they're bad, what I want to hear really are ideas about how we move towards this long-lasting peace. Because I don't see a world in which Palestinians disappear, nor do I see a world in which Israelis disappear. So the question becomes, what does coexistence look like? right? I'm open to ideas, and I would love to kind of explore that as well. Thank you. They took the good words. The word I would offer is hope. I think it's important to remember that peace is possible. Diplomacy does work. I was writing down here, you got 1978, Camp David Accords, it normalized relationship between Egypt and Israel. 2015, nuclear deal. I mean, it's possible to have peace. And I just want to encourage everyone to always reject any simplistic framing. When you've got conflict that's been going on for a long time, if it was really easy and there was one quick solution, we would have found it already. So to reject any binary framing, to look deeper and just to keep hope alive that, like someone said before, we can have a world one day where there's no war.